Okay, MOvember, day 12, and today I'm going to do a piece out of this book, Ready to Heal, Kelly McDaniel, Breaking Free of Addictive Relationships, the third edition. Now, this I've been running a women's love addiction group for some time, and certainly learnt from initially from Pia Melody's material. There was not a lot on this. It's certainly been one of those addictions that's been ridiculed, and like sex addiction. Um, and I will do, and I have done for other Movembers, the sort of dance, the cycle of how love and avoidance addictions moves together, and that's in some of my other Movember campaigns, and I might do another one of those for this one. But this book is has been a book that I came across. I've heard Kelly speak. She does a great webinar with for the Centre for Healthy Sex, where Alexandra Katahakis is the clinical director, and this book just really is written by a woman for women that really helps them understand what's the origins of sex and love addiction for them, and what makes a woman's experience of this unique. And it is a well-informed, neuropsychologically sound book. It goes through and really pulls apart the state of disease. It talks about culture and cultural imprinting on women. So much, it goes through Carnes's cycle of addiction. Really unpacks so much at the beginning of this book. But what I'm going to pull from is tonight is certainly something that Kelly, I believe, has coined this phrase, is mother hunger. And you'll see on my Facebook business page and stuff, I've posted her webinar that she's done on mother hunger. So this is just the beginning part of that chapter. I just want to give you a taste of this book. If you're a woman out there, or you are in a relationship with a woman who really struggles with this issue, please look at this book. Sometimes I just even refer it to people because it's got its chapters on abuse and the impact of neglect and abandonment on the brain, the neuroscience, the cycle of addiction, the stuff around the cultural beliefs and core beliefs of women. It's really useful, even if you don't relate to the title. Just around having female relational issues, there's so much in it. So, chapter 7, Mother Hunger. The loss of the daughter to the mother to the daughter, is the essential female tragedy by, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to pronounce, Andre Rich, of Woman Born. It makes people uncomfortable to discuss mothers who aren't kind to their daughters. When I was writing this chapter, my resources, inspiration, were sprawled on the kitchen table when a neighbour dropped by. My resources included Peg Streep's Mean Mothers and Hope Edelman's Motherless Daughters. As she noticed the book titles, a look of shock crossed her face. I watched her gently as she stumbled to find the words to express herself and asked, "What? Why? Are those books good?" Her reaction is not unlike most I've encountered when I bring up the troubled mother-daughter relationships. Even among colleagues, the topic makes people squirm. The idea that a mother may not love or be kind, or she might even abandon her daughter, is a threatening concept, hitting a tender place in all of us. This is primal. A mother's rejection is a threat to survival. Our primitive hunter-gatherer brain equates abandonment with death. Babies left alone in the wild, before we lived in homes of concrete and high-rises, could be eaten or die of exposure. Motherhood is sacred. Our culture holds the idea that motherhood is a sacred space. Embedded in our collective social psyche is the idea that mother love is pure and strong. Like a Hallmark card, the idea that no one will love you like your mother, or that all mothers love unconditionally, permeates our collective unconscious. Mythological maternal ideology assumes that all women are equipped to meet the diverse and changing needs of multiple children through different stages of development, infancy, toddlerhood, adolescence, and adulthood, without educational training. Mother mythology enables the cultural denial that mothers and fathers don't need support or education about the needs of children, that parenting is purely instinctual and anyone can do it. Implicit in cultural ideas about selfless mothers is the powerful message that if you don't like your mother, or if a mother doesn't like her child or children, something is wrong. Added reinforcement comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition that requires us to honour thy mother and father. For those reasons, exploring the relationship with your mother can be difficult. By doing so, you will encounter internal as well as external resistance. Internal resistance could look like the following: dismissive thinking, such as, my mother was no big deal, I don't think we need to talk about her. Guilty feelings, as if you were betraying your mother. Pity, such as she did the best that she could. Shame statements such as, why didn't she love me, what's wrong with me? And restlessness, discomfort, pain, or numbness in your body. This internal resistance usually shows up in therapy sessions. Resistance is normal. It's protection from the conflict that arises between mother and daughter. Too often, an angry, hurt daughter is seen as ungrateful or spoiled. For this reason, it's essential that you find an ally on this journey of exploring your relationship with mum. Who will support you? Who can you trust to understand the grief of an unloving or abandoning mother? Keep in mind that as daughters, we never outgrow our desire for a mother, someone to comfort us when we're broken, celebrate us when we're strong. If your mother can't be this person, you've been looking for someone or something that can. Mother loss fuels your painful search for love or need for sex. Mothers provide a map of how to be a woman. The relationship you have with your mother has a psychological depth that sets it apart from every other relationship in your life. Author Peg Street refers to how the mother-daughter relationship not only helps the daughter form her sense of self, but also helps her comprehend how relationships work with others. If you lost your mother to premature death, you know the experience of facing the world without a map of how to be a woman. You also know profound grief and loneliness. Daughters who lose their mothers prematurely experience the following: a deep isolation from their remaining family members, a sharp awareness of death, feeling stuck emotionally, feel younger than their peers but often act older, look for nurturing from a partner or friend who can't meet their needs, and intense abandonment, fear, and anxiety. The pain motherless daughters experience provides a guidepost for therapists who work with sex and love addicts. In trying to find a source of addictive love and sex, a desolate inner landscape of a motherless daughter teaches therapists more than most psychological theories. A daughter without a mother copes with loss in ways that sex and love addicts do. They both describe a similar emptiness and a fear of being discovered as hollow and broken. In fact, my clients regularly state, I feel like I was born in the wrong family. The characteristics of a motherless daughters can also describe as some case studies in this book: Tori, Barbara, Heather, and Maria. Barbara has a constant awareness of death and has panic attacks when her husband leaves the house. When he leaves, it triggers her abandonment fear, bringing back her father's hospitalization and mother's absence at age 4. In adolescence and early adulthood, both Maria and Heather felt younger than their female peers. It was as if they were missing a rule book on how to be a woman and act appropriately. They compensated by overachieving in school and appear more functional than they felt inside. In therapy, women say things like, I don't feel my age, or ask, when will I feel like an adult? Although these clients have living mothers, they suffer in relationship with them. Not unlike motherless daughters, daughters of unkind mothers also face the world alone. They have the burden of unlearning their mother's damaging messages. Little girls think their mothers are perfect. They can't see anything wrong with them. So when a mother can't make time for her infant or child, the little girl internalizes that the problem must be her, not her mother. If your mother was dismissive, shaming, or physically abusive, you carry a dark secret belief that something is wrong with you. Conscious or not, this belief informs the choices you make for friends and lovers. You likely find relationships rejecting or humiliating. The task in recovery is to unveil this internalized lie, fight it, and reclaim your self-worth and dignity. Perhaps your mother doesn't fit this dismissive, mean illustration, but something felt off in your relationship with her. If your mother's love felt heavy, it's likely that her vulnerability required too much of you. Maybe you felt more like her friend than her daughter. Your task in recovery is different from the daughter whose mother was overtly abusive, but no less difficult. Being needed by a mother can feel special or normal, so identifying what you lost is tricky. But What you lost was the chance to be young, small, and be vulnerable. You had to grow up too soon to meet the needs of your insecure, fragile mother. Your little girl needs were never met. This is a form of emotional neglect that gets little recognition because it masquerades as you are so special or you are so grown up. It's impossible to heal what you can't identify. The type of neglect suffered by daughters of vulnerable mothers routinely goes unnoticed even by professionals. But what you've experienced is a role inversion that also left you without a guide, a map for how to be a woman. You needed a mother you needed a mother. To the outside world, excuse me. To the outside world, it may have appeared that you had one, but somewhere inside you knew the truth. She was weak, vulnerable, and unable to provide you with necessary guidance and support. You may feel awful for knowing that you were stronger than your mother, that you couldn't respect her or may have been embarrassed by her. You desperately wanted a mother you could be proud of and rely on for support and strength. As a result of having a mother who was too needy, you may be drawn to lovers and friends who are like children and you feel suffocated by them. Your task in recovery is to identify your weariness and let yourself off the hook for being your mother's mother. How emotional orphans are born. Infants are born with the hard wiring in their brain for attachment, connection, and love. However, for the brain to work properly, a healthy, safe attachment figure is necessary. Scientists have determined that the early relationship between mother and child neurologically imprints the infant's nervous system, becoming a template for future emotional relationships. Love nourishes the new brain and allows it to develop. Attachment theory and neuroscience inform us that in the first 18 months of life, the emotional area of the brain, right side, is active long before the logical left side. The right side of the brain takes cues from one's surroundings and lets the infant know whether all is well. In order to thrive, the infant brain must have a caregiver who can respond with care, presence, and love. Infants learn about love not through language, but through experience of love on a neurological level. In the first 18 months of life, the infant's experiences with her mother and father forge connections in brain cells that help the brain grow. With secure attachment to a parent, infants and toddlers learn the world is safe, love means care, and relationships are trustworthy. In safe relationships, the young brain develops appropriately, setting the stage for future happiness and healthy relationships. By measuring parts of the brain, researchers are learning that the brains of children lovingly nurtured in infancy look markedly different from the brains of children who have been starved for affection. In other words, emotional deprivation during the first 2 years of life will literally alter the functioning and chemistry of the brain, as well as the person's ability to cope with stress and emotional difficulties later in life. And this is where really, just get over it. Got an issue, get a tissue. It's why it's so poisonous to people in recovery who are really battling. Unavailable, depressed, or abusive parents impair a young, developing brain. The neurological system of an infant in this setting learns that love means danger, people can't be trusted, and the world isn't safe. When the attachment figure is unsafe, the brain essentially freezes. The baby feels alone, orphaned. Emotional absence is death to the infant brain. To cope, a baby or child learns to self-soothe or auto-regulate. For example, thumb sucking is a common auto-regulating behavior. In Maria's case, her mother didn't want her to be needy and dependent, so she tried to stop her thumb sucking. It's normal for an infant or child to be dependent. Thumb sucking doesn't mean a child will be needy in adulthood. However, if normal child-sized dependency needs go unmet, they grow bigger. Maria's mother didn't realize this, and in her efforts to create an independent child, she did just the opposite. Maria's thumb sucking continued until kindergarten, when her mother increased the efforts to stop her. She shamed her by saying big girls don't do that and no one will want to be with a baby who sucks a thumb. You won't have any friends. Maria desperately wanted to please her mother, so she stopped. In therapy, she reflects back and realizes her infatuation with boys and masturbation started in kindergarten. With a sigh, she says, "I guess I found a way to stop sucking my thumb." Like Maria, Barbara sucked her thumb as a young child. Additionally, she had a special stuffed lamb that substituted for her mother's closeness and love. She recalls a family trip where she lost her lamb. As she relates the story, the light seemed to come on. They took it. I know they did. I was 8 and they had been trying to get me to let go of that lamb for a long time, but I hung on. When my mother told me my lamb was lost, I couldn't cry or breathe. I froze. It was awful. Barbara's reaction illustrates the terrible pain and panic that occurs when an attachment source is taken from a child. Chronic autoregulation like thumb-sucking, masturbation, or fantasy can lead to disassociation. Disassociation is a survival mechanism wired into the human brain for occasional, unavoidable moments of stress, allowing an infant or child to disconnect from her body or her feelings. Barbara's reaction to a lost lamb illustrates a dissociative response to stress. She stopped breathing and shut down. Her feelings were so intolerable that she froze. There were no tears, there was no anger, there was nothing. In the case of poor maternal attachment, disassociation becomes a habit. Addictive disassociation usually starts in infancy and is often confused with being a good baby that never cries. A baby who never cries is not necessarily a good or happy baby. For example, if a baby is routinely left alone in a crib to cry it out, she eventually learns to stop crying, behave. Sadly, this is a baby who learns to disassociate. What she's learning isn't how to behave, but rather that her needs won't be met and her caregiver is a dangerous person who can't be trusted. For the infant brain, an unresponsive mother registers a threat. Crying is her only way to indicate need. When no one responds, the infant's brain goes into a fear response: freeze, fight, or flight. Since she can't flee, she's in a crib, and flight, crying doesn't work, she freezes. Stops trying, stops crying, breathing becomes laboured. Autoregulation, self-soothing, takes the place of a mother's care and allows an infant to feel less afraid. Not attaching to your mother can happen in myriad ways. Although some disconnections may seem benign, if they happen regularly and without repair, they're devastating to the growing infant's brain. These disconnections could result from the following: repeatedly leaving an infant to cry alone, active addiction that inhibits a mother's capacity to respond to an infant or child, premature death of the mother, hitting or spanking a child, shaming an infant or child for having emotions, or removing or stealing a child's attachment object before the child is ready to let go. As noted earlier, from birth, a female brain is like a machine designed for connection. If isolation is chronic, as in the case of neglect, abuse, or touch deprivation, she learns to self-soothe. Self-soothing or autoregulation is a substitute for mother love. With repeated loss of connection, the brain won't develop healthy ways to regulate emotion. This is why, as an adult, you may experience anger outbursts that surprise you and scare others, or tears that seem to come out of nowhere. Or, on the other hand, you may share very little of your inner thoughts and feelings with others, and nobody gets to know you. Now, this chapter alone goes on to talk about disassociation and addiction, the first lessons of love, and then attachment styles and the different styles. I might even, I feel pretty compelled to maybe read this as a part 2 tomorrow, because there's so much in it. Please, if you relate to this, look up Kelly McDaniel. She's got a great presence on YouTube. There's a few webinars. This book is essential. Please buy it. I always sort of risk reading these things at times and pulling excerpts, but I just love this material. I use it all the time. This is, tonight we literally read from this chapter, and the women in the group were relating, and it's a painful, as Pia Melody said, joy, pain, or pain-filled joy, or joy-filled pain, to be able to sort of realize you're not the only one. So Ready to Heal, Kelly McDaniel. It is MOvember, day 12. The motor's coming in a little. Please donate to MOvember. I have a special event on this weekend with Robert Weiss, Dr. Rob, zooming in live from LA to talk about sex and love addiction. So be gentle with your heart. See you on the recovery road. Talk soon.